this is Heg from Grimfrost, and I'm here in Gothenburg together with Einar Селвик from Wardruna. Great to have you with us.
Likewise, great to be here.
All right. So we have a couple of questions for you, and just jump right into it, I guess, right?
Yeah.
All right.
Let's go for it.
Wardruna is a very popular band, and you're touring the world. Did you see this coming when you started the band?
Definitely not. I could see that, or when I started out, it was definitely born out of just a desire to do something for myself. I thought in the beginning that it would be too sort of far out for most people, but when I started showing like demos to both people in the industry and to friends and saw that they reacted very strongly to it in a positive sense, then I kind of saw that maybe it has there are more people than me who have sort of wanted this type of music.
Yeah. So did you envision Wardruna being exactly what it is today, or did you have like was that a process that kind of started once you got going, so to speak?
I would say it's both, because I did have this very clear vision that I've sort of been hunting ever since, and I guess I still hunt for it, because I see the songs, I hear them, and try to catch them basically, and so. But on the other hand, you have to remember that back when I started this, like early 2000, started going into the process of finding instrumentation and studying them, and at that point there wasn't a lot of people who knew much about them. Now there is a big popularity around and interest around these things, but back then it was a handful of people in Scandinavia who knew anything about them or built them or whatever. So that was of course a long process of both acquiring them, either building it myself or have somebody build it for me, and then sort of learn how they work. And I was very decisive on the one thing, and that was that I didn't want to hear any music played on them before trying it out myself. So I sort of wanted to approach it more like a child, and perhaps try to find the instrument's own voice before. You know, if I give a taglhappa to a folk musician, they would play folk music on it.
Yeah, exactly.
They would sort of give it direction, and I wanted to avoid that. So of course it's been a long process of and a long sort of do-it-yourself process.
Very hands-on kind of work.
And so exactly it was impossible to know exactly how it would be in the end, and I guess, you know, the first album, it took me 7 years to finish it, and a lot of that was about finding that balance and sort of the right ingredients for it, and
What sparked your interest in your Norse heritage?
I think that started early childhood. I had people in my family who were they knew their saga material and were very much interested in history and like to talk. and so since I was a child, I would get these stories when we were out traveling on vacation or just nearby. I would get these stories about what had happened here, and ships sailed in here, or this was a holy place once, and then then you get this history becomes a living thing. You get these images of I don't know, a sense of time and a sense of history in a different way. It becomes alive, and I guess I didn't think much about it back then, but in my early teens, when I on my own started to get that interest. I sort of saw that it was there, and yeah, it was a short way back, and of course at that point my interest became I guess more on a deeper level. I wanted to understand, because when we were learning about it in schools, I couldn't really understand it, because it was such a different way of viewing the world than what we normally do in our linear way of viewing the world. Here, everything moved in cycles. There were no all-knowing gods or goddesses or almighty, only good, only bad. It was more like nature. Everything is woven together in more natural, basically, more like nature. Everything moves in cycle. Even time is viewed as a cycle. I just really wanted to understand it more properly, and thankfully I sort of had people around me who could point me in a good direction in terms of going to studying sources rather than New Age books on the matter. So I sort of skipped a couple of years of
nonsense.
A mist of confusion.
So does your interest manifest itself in any other way besides through your music?
It can be. My approach to this in this project overall is, I would say, it has two parts. One is the academic approach, and the other one is the more intuitive part, of course, personal, spiritual, or philosophical. I think it's like I sing in one of the songs, a tree without roots will fall, and I think that when you work on a project like this, where sources are so scattered around, and it's in many ways difficult to approach, so I think it's really important to start on something solid. So I guess studying books and is a big part, but also it can be anything. I love doing creative work, whether or not it's carving runes or building an instrument or
so it's like a
it can be a painting, it can be but it comes out in different forms, I guess.
So it's like a lifestyle. I don't feel that there is a separation between my work and myself. Wardruna is me in a way. It's the first thing I think about when I wake up, and it's the last thing I think about when I fall to sleep, because it's although I try to keep a lot of distance in my music, it's also, of course, very personal. It comes from somewhere. Exactly.
I think that's a very important thing, that if you want to speak to the heart, it needs to come from the heart in a way.
I totally understand that. So why do you think our Norse heritage and cultural aspects are so appreciated globally now?
I think that's a very good question, and I think there are several reasons for it. I think that one thing is, of course, that the material itself is very much I would say friendly and natural way of approaching how we are towards each other, and so it's a very universal, timeless thing that I think you find if you go far enough back in time, you see the same things all over the planet. These traditions that are born out of nature, they never cease to to be relevant in a way, because they are born out of nature. The same nature that they get a different form, of course, depending on where they arise. But the main ingredients are the same, and that's one thing. And the other thing I think is that up here in the north we were sort of left alone for a longer period than the rest of Europe. We were allowed to cultivate and to develop our tradition for a much longer time. So I think a lot of people from other parts of the world who don't have a Nordic heritage or can sort of see it almost as a gateway to their own pre-Christian history, because these things are so related.
It's a very interesting thought, actually.
And I think that that's how I would have thought, at least. And so I think that's partly why it's so popular today, and many people sort of connect to it, because it's basically almost like you see into you get a glimpse of something that is very much older, in a way, and universal. On in terms of Wardruna, and how I approach these things is mainly to focus on. I don't think your roots are important just because they are your roots. There are a lot of things, but that was so central and relevant and powerful back then that sort of don't have the same value anymore. Like the value of iron or brass or stuff like that you made into cultic objects or whatever. Now you can go to the hardware store and buy it. It's sort of that's just a silly example, but there are many things that aren't necessarily doesn't carry the same power and relevance anymore. It's switched. So I try to focus on the stuff that is relevant still, that still speak to us. They back then they for sure did not have a romantic view on nature, for instance. They were battling nature. It was surviving, conquering nature in a way. Whereas we who have removed ourselves from nature, we need it. We have a more romantic relation to it, and I guess that's a natural thing.
How do you relate to Norse mythology, and what does it mean to you?
I for me, on a personal level, I am a philosophical person. I'm a spiritual person, and I find a lot of I find a lot of wisdom in the old myths that I relate to, and they are so full of layers that you can pull in different direction, and you can sort of they very often they describe this cycle of life and death in some way. Circle of the year. You can read it as that, or you can pull it in and into a more philosophical, psychological aspect. And so I think they are so full of complexity and wisdom. So I really love studying, and I learn a lot as a human being from it, and take great inspiration to want to grow. Like, for instance, Odin. For me personally, you know, Odin is quite a character, who is all over the place, and throughout the time you also see that there is a switch in his nature in a way. But for me personally, I think that's what I'm most inspired is his will to grow at any cost. No matter what, like Skälver skälven mer. That's the words from the poem when he is hanged himself in the tree to acquire the knowledge, the profound knowledge of runes. And I think that word is sort of a mantra for me as well. I give myself to myself. It basically means that anything of any value here comes at a cost. So yeah, and for me, the old myths carry that. I don't read it like I don't see it as religious text in the same way as people interpret the Bible as serving you any truth, because there are so much. It's nature. It's human nature. It's much more flexible, and nobody died for my sins. The gods help the ones that help themselves. Yeah, basically.
Your music is often described as Viking Age music, yet there are very few and vague sources describing the music of that time and age. How would you describe your music?
Definitely not as Viking Age music. But yeah, very very often we see that it gets that label. But I think that's for practical reasons. Yeah. I guess that people put it into that label. But in fact is Viking Age is such a small period of long cultural history. It's sort of and on a personal level, it's not the period I am most passionate about. Really? For me, it's the period before, like migration period, also Bronze Age is the Viking Age is of course it's a time of great change, and I think a lot of people were losing their ways, and a lot of things were changing culturally. But of course has a lot of fantastic things, but like you say, the instruments, we don't know. There's a lot of things we don't know about instrumentation back then. It is like a giant jigsaw. Yeah. But the thing is, if you have a very broad overview of the sources, there is still a lot of things you can say about how music might have sounded back then, both because of the limitations found in many of the instruments, but you have also clues within the poetic traditions that you see remains of even today in the oldest song traditions in Scandinavia, and also in the Rimur traditions in Iceland. You can see traces of specific verse metrics being sung in specific ways. They have a certain melody and they have a certain rhythmical pattern to it. Yeah. If it's written in this verse metric, it follows this path, and so on. So there are a lot of these small clues onto how they've sounded. But for me, Wardruna is more about taking something old, making something new with it. It's not about copying the past. It's more about trying to of course, find what possibly was the authentic way of doing this, and then create something new with it.
Are there other important aspects beside the music when it comes to your work?
I see that when we perform in different places on this planet, that people have very strong reactions to it. And the interesting part is that they react in the same way all over the place. So it is something there that moves beyond the boundaries of language and modern culture in a sense. It's universal themes. So even though I sort of have this Old Norse wrapping around it, it's the core of it is universal and timeless. And basically it's about man's relation to nature, to each other, and to something bigger than yourself. And I think, and in a live setting, it's very much about creating some form of sacred space, I think. Okay. Neutral, I would also say. Yeah. Because today, I think there are a lot of people who do not go to the church or to the mosque or wherever to feel this holy or solemn space where you connect to something, feel connectiveness to something nameless, whether or not it's people around you or just that moment or to something bigger than yourself, nature, and so the aim is to create that in a sense. I think many people feel it has this. Yeah, it is almost like a ritual, but it's not somebody up there preaching truth to you. It's it's a dialogue. Yeah.
So what inspires you then in your creativity?
It can be. Well, it is very much, of course, nature. Sometimes it can be the lack of nature. Okay. That the longing, in a way, but. I don't know, you know, the Wardruna, the first 3 albums is about, we basically made music to the Proto-Scandinavian runes, also known as the Elder Futhark. Yeah. So they are divided into 3 albums, and for me these, of course, for those who don't know what runes runes are the written, the ancient Nordic alphabet basically, and the word rune can mean, of course, a letter. It can mean a secret. It can mean wisdom. It can mean to whisper. Yeah. It can mean a magical song, and of course a phonetic sound. Yeah. So it has a lot of layers, and then we have this, each of the runes have a symbolic value. The reason why we know this is from some a collection of very old runic poems. So this album trilogy is about trying to interpret them on their own premises. That means if we work with the rune for the birch tree, I went out in the forest and I played on birch trees. Okay, yeah. And implement that in the music. And fire, torches, stones, water. It's been, and even recording on specific dates, time of year, places of relevance. So it's been there are many layers to how it's created and But to simplify in terms of your question of what inspires me, since the goal has always been to get as close as possible to what it is I'm interpreting, in many ways you can say that it's the runes that is the composer and I am just the instrument, in a way. Okay,
the vessel.
In a way, because I've done a lot of strange recordings for it, to sort of try and catch that feeling and to get as close as possible. I believe I could chop off a table leg and get the same sound as a birch tree, but I'm 100% convinced that the listener will know the difference, whether or not that's conscious or subconscious. doesn't matter. Added value is added value.
Yeah.
But when you boil it down, it comes down to nature.
Okay. So that is kind of the birth process then for a Wardruna song, that you go out into nature and...
Yeah, and sometimes it can actually be the opposite.
Okay,
like
yeah.
I said, like the longing for nature. But yeah, I write most of my music when I'm out walking. That's my thing.
Yeah. So you mentioned the Elder Futhark, and why did you choose working with the Elder Futhark rather than using the Viking Age younger Futhark?
Good question. One that I've asked myself many times. Because of course, the Elder Futhark is by far the one we know the least about. Even the rune names are based on reconstructions made by runologists in late 1800s.
Yeah.
And so that part of it is definitely challenging, and we know much more about the Viking Age runes. But I guess for me they represent a more complete system and a more suited one in terms of telling the story I wanted to tell. But I have to admit that because I have such a profound respect to the subject, both on a personal level but also on a academic level, I don't want to make stuff up. Like to give you an example, you can open a New Age rune book, which will always be on the Elder Futhark, and there you will find page up and down on what stones they represent, and trees and herbs and so on. But fact is, some of these runes, the only thing we know for a fact is found in 2 lines of text that in many instances are so cryptic that they can basically mean whatever, which is of course challenging but also intriguing, because I think that the way these rune poems they don't give you any truth. They basically leave you with 10 new questions. So
we obviously have to talk a little bit about Vikings as well.
Absolutely.
Because you participated in the TV series Vikings.
Yeah.
And have written music to the show. So how was that experience?
It's been good. It's been of course it's a fun project to be part of, and I've learned a lot. One thing, they of course used a lot of. It started with them using a lot of the Wardruna music for the first season, and then for the second season they sort of they wanted that kind of soundscape more into the heart of the series. So then I started to work with Trevor Morris, who is the main composer of the show, and did quite a lot of work with him for a couple of seasons. And then I also do a lot of whenever there is on-camera musical things, rituals or battle cries or drunken songs or it can be any number of things. But if somebody does anything like that, it's I go into the saga material and poetry and try and find something that's appropriate for the setting. And of course I've twice been in front of the camera also, which was also a great experience, and met a lot of nice people, and of course some of the actors I've been in contact with quite a bit during this period and still am. So it's been a good thing. Yeah, feels good when they're doing this. When they're portraying our culture, it feels good to contribute. And of course, this being a foreign massive production entertainment series, I have to say, not made for history nerds like me necessarily. So it feels good to sort of add some
sprinkles of authenticity.
Yeah, precisely.
So do you have any other dream projects you'd like to do?
I feel I'm doing it.
You're doing it, all right.
Yeah, like I said before, I don't feel that there is a separation between me and my work in a way. I do what I love to do. What I would do it whether or not people were listening to it or not. I would still do it. So I don't know. For the future, I'm both working on of course new full-on Wardruna material. But I'm also working on a more skaldic approached music, more because I do quite a lot of solo concerts as well, where I do it fully acoustic, only with historical instruments. So I'm also working on a release with that format.
Okay.
So moving in both directions, I would say, both minimizing it and sort of going back to the root of it, but also continuing to evolve into a larger soundscape. So I don't know, just continue to do what I do and
and you do it really well. So I hope you do.
Thank you.
Well, that's all we have for you. Thank you so much, Einar, for sharing your thoughts and experiences with us and the followers of Grimfrost.
Pleasure was mine.
All right, thank you very much.